rate cuts would bring about a bond rally, and that would reduce the government borrowing costs. Okay, that would reduce the government borrowing costs, and that is a good thing for debt snowballing down the hill out of control. But it might reduce the borrowing costs on the debt from 1.2 trillion annually to 1.1 trillion annually. And I'm sorry, but that is a really small benefit. What is going to benefit even more? The gold price. The gold price. Okay, I told you this before. Everything he does is going to lift the gold price and get very marginal benefit of what he's intending.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics and another special show because certainly one of our most popular guests here on the channel. And well, Jim is obviously a popular guest on all corners of the internet and YouTube. And of course, I'm joined by the great Dr. Jim Willie, editor of the Hat Trick Letter, the golden-jackass.com, amongst other things. And Jim, I was telling people that we had this interview scheduled, although I'm sure that with the way things have been going lately, that you would have absolutely nothing to say, and we would likely just sit here in silence because between the attempt on Trump's life, Joe Biden dropping out of the race, things happening, sanctions, Europe, Russia, I figured we'd record a couple minutes of silence. You'd have nothing to say about any of this, and we'd wrap up. But anyway, it's great to have you here.
I'd like some silence for the death of the Democrat Party.
That hasn't been going too well there lately.
A month ago, I made a list of factors that will contribute toward its demise, but we should probably leave that alone. I had a really smart colleague in 1983. I was 3 years into my first job. Okay. I got the doctorate at Carnegie Mellon in 1980. It was 83. I had problems with my manager. He was a New York fellow, and they tend to be difficult. And he crossed me 20 times. And the smart guy who entered my office said, "Jim, leave him alone. Don't get in his way. Never get in the way of a guy on self-destruct mode. No, don't get in his way." Okay, that's where the Democrats are now. I was laughing while I was shaving because I had a 4-day beard coming into this. And I was just laughing, thinking about what I was going to say. They thought that removing Biden would be a good thing, but Harris is even worse. Harris is even worse. Joe Biden actually had a Senate record. It was vacant, but it was a record. He was vice president for 8 years. Didn't do anything, didn't have any cause, but at least he was vice president. Harris is indefensible, and the blacks don't like her. She ain't going to get the black vote. She ain't black. She ain't even U.S. born. This is going to come out. And let me just say that she's got quite a few things in common with Michelle Obama. Down under. Let's leave that alone, though. I got to say that my big concerns now, my point of emphasis is what's going to happen when we have the election. No, there are two scenarios. One is there's so much violence and craziness and further attempts on Trump's life that the Supreme Court steps in and gives Trump the presidency for 4 years that was taken from him improperly from voter fraud that has been admitted on several battleground states, by the way. The other possibility is that we have the election and it's semi-smooth sailing to November, which is a dream. I mean, that's a fantasy. Let's face it. We're not going to have a smooth ride to November. But if we did have a uninterrupted ride to November, I'm expecting a 60 to 70% margin of victory. for Trump. And the polls are saying it's a dead heat. You know why, Chris? Because they're not doing any polls. They're just making shit up. Okay, the trick before, and this came out from a leak in CNN 4 years ago, the trick was to double sample and triple sample the Democrats among registered voters. And that way you get the race to be closer. I mean, that's a logical criminal way of getting things done. But now that would still result in a 40% lead for Trump. So now they're not doing polls. They're making shit up. Okay. I'm focused on what is likely to be seen, Chris, in the first several months of a Trump 2 administration. What's okay? Okay, you know me. I focus on the finance, but I never pass up an opportunity to chuckle over the demise and self-destruction of the Democrat Party. And by the way, it's not a Democrat Party anymore. It's really not. It got taken over by the Geneva New World Order types. So let's leave all that alone and just try to focus, if you don't mind, on Trump policies, Trump objectives. And, you know, here's the funny part. And this is not funny tragic. This is funny successful. This is funny to the precious metals investors. Every single thing that Trump will try to do will lift gold. It may not achieve his objectives. And this is the main theme of my July newsletter that's going to be posted tomorrow. I'm almost done with it right now. I'm just, you know, kind of finishing off a few things. Like I added today a non-financial item, that the River Seine is so polluted by E. coli that they canceled the triathlon. Did you hear about that, Chris? They canceled the triathlon. They canceled the triathlon. Yeah, they're sabotaging the high-speed rail. By the way, in 2003, I traveled on the TGV. Stands for Très Grande Vitesse, very high speed. Très Grande Vitesse, very high speed. Not a very original name, but it's a high-speed train. I took it from Paris to Nice to visit with Kurt Rickenbacker, which was a very memorable week in my life in 2003, a year before the newsletter. But there's sabotage on the train. There's inadequate food supply for the athletes. You know, you want to shut down the farms and host the Olympics, you better expect some shortages of food for the athlete. So they're brown bagging. The athletes are brown bagging as they go to the Olympic events because there's inadequate food. And we've had a couple of other events canceled from violence. And oh my gosh, you realize what would have happened if they insulted Mohammed and had some gay Mohammed on a chariot going to heaven? They would burn Paris down.
I was going to ask you your thoughts of a very unique, shall we call it, musical and opening ceremony at the Olympics.
Oh, it was pretty sickening. I don't even want to talk about it. Let's try to focus on finance. I already mentioned a few things that are near the edge. Let's let me just mention a couple things regarding Trump. He's no pure hero of mine. He's not. He's the best answer to the current situation, which is we're hurtling headlong into a fascist state with no rights and no viable economy and debt and criminality everywhere, including the streets. Trump is not my pure hero. He's like a 90% solution. We've got to have a human solution. And therefore, he's going to have flaws. He's going to have warts. I'd rather not get into the flaws and warts. I want to focus on his challenges. He has said he wants a lower dollar. Okay? He wants more competitive dollar for trade. Everything he does in that direction will result in a higher gold price and maybe not a lower dollar. Now, let me give a quick lesson to the people out there who don't know too much about dollar valuation index. It's called the USDX index, and it's 52% euro. If the dollar goes down, the euro will go up half as much as the dollar. Is that beyond like a seventh grade arithmetic kid, mathematics kid? The dollar index is 52% euro. If the dollar goes down, the euro will go up half as much. Okay, this is not rocket science. This is absolute basic stuff. Is there any strength in the European economy? Have they overcome the energy supply problems and the Russian sanctions? Have they overcome the war on farmers to shut them down for nitrogen pollution? Are you kidding me? Are they not interfering with food supply in Western Europe in order to import Ukrainian grain that is reported to have certain toxic elements injected? Okay, is there anything strong about the European economy? No. Okay, so any effort to reduce the dollar valuation is going to result in more inflation and direct impact to a higher gold price. It's just so basic, and it's a bit funny. Trump has said, I want to do a series of rate cuts. And today, Hatzius, did you see this on from Goldman Sachs? Okay, this is just wonderful. They're going to use false economic statistics to justify a 1.5% interest rate decline. It could be 6 cuts, but it could be 5, with the first being 30 basis points. Sorry, 50 basis points. Okay, so we got false economic statistics, false labor statistics, false inflation statistics, and if they doctor it all and present it with a good enough package, by gum, we can get some rate cuts. And we can lie then about the resulting inflation that comes and say that it'll be good inflation besides. It'll be good. Okay, you know, we have just destroyed the economic statistical mechanisms out there. Yeah, Hatzius, is this what you're going to show?
Yeah, and he's saying if the
John,
case for a rate cut is clear, why wait another 7 weeks before delivering it? So
you gotta love it. Why wait? Why wait? Let's do it now. Let's get a bond rally. And you know, here's another justification. Rate cuts would bring about a bond rally, and that would reduce the government borrowing costs. Okay, that would reduce the government borrowing costs, and that is a good thing for debt snowballing down the hill out of control. But you know, it might reduce the borrowing costs on the debt from 1.2 trillion annually to 1.1 trillion annually. And I'm sorry, but that is a really small benefit. What is going to benefit even more? The gold price. The gold price. Okay, I told you this before. Everything he does is going to lift the gold price and get very marginal benefit of what he's intending. As foreign countries dump their treasuries, and they're doing it still in very impressive volume, we're not going to get a lower dollar, because the Forex countries that reduce their treasury bonds holdings are not going to keep them in dollar reserves, and therefore their currencies will not have a benefit. It's really quite insane. It's just quite insane. Look what happened in Japan. Like, you know, you can't leave Japan out. And notice that the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, they don't mention Japan ever, as having dumped $180 billion of treasury bonds in a 12-month period, bringing about a decline. That's right, a decline in the yen, a decline in selling treasury bonds. They got a decline and a financial crisis that has not stopped 18 months later. Okay, so foreign discharge of Treasury bonds will bring about a stronger dollar. Unbelievable. The paradox is beyond. I have not heard Alistair McLeod talk about this. I have not heard Tom Luongo talk about this. It's a paradox. Now, if a smaller country like, say, Argentina or, say, Norway sells Treasury bonds, then that will have a positive effect on their domestic currency. Okay, there is so much more that Trump wants to do, but let me just mention that he's not going to get like a carte blanche all the way. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, and in particular, look, we're recording on Tuesday afternoon and quite a big move down or up in the end, but down from about the
Up in the end.
155 level.
Okay, but look at the amount, 155 to 153. That's minuscule. It's like not even 2%. The real action, if you can get a 5 year, could you click on the 5 year?
Sure can.
Look at that. That's the dollar going up. And it was, if you could notice the time between, say, October of 21 and October of 22, look at that. That is when they sold $180 billion worth of treasuries. Look at that. It went from about 110 to 145. It went up 25%. The dollar went up 25% when Japan dumped a tremendous amount of treasury bonds. And, you know, I don't want to spend too much time. It's not a waste. I don't want to spend too much time on the Japanese situation. But they are the lesson. If you want to dump a lot of treasury bonds and you're a major Forex country, you're going to do damage, maybe permanent, to your banking and financial system. Japan reacted by printing money to cover their own debt because foreigners sold their debt. And that worsened their problems because they printed more money. They turned a 21% decline into a 25% decline. Those are big numbers that you don't recover from. I wonder if the Japanese are still charging the same amount for a Toyota to ship it into Los Angeles. I'm guessing they're not. I'm guessing that they're keeping the price the same and they're trying to recover some extra profit. Okay, this is a major story for the decade. Japan's crisis is not over. What are they doing? I'll close by saying they're going to the gold standard. And they're tolerating and defending against assassinations by the money masters. Let's leave that alone. Okay, Chris, this is a remarkable time. There's a desire for Trump to end the Ukraine war, and that would end funding to the Ukraine elite. And it's not just the Ukraine, it's the Geneva crowd. They're going to want to stop Trump before he gets in office. That, I'm putting it mildly. And the Rockefellers are very concerned because Trump wants to do a Nuremberg trial. So the Rockefellers are going to stop Trump before he gets into office. And Trump wants to close the borders, in particular Texas, Arizona, California. And Soros doesn't like that. So Soros might want to stop Trump before he gets in office. Okay, I'm outlining those who have motive against the orange man, Mr. T. These are scary, scary times. I could go on, but I want to keep it, proper. I think I'm not even going to tell you what I think Trump is doing to defend himself. I'm not going to go there. Let me just say that if they knock off Trump, another Trump will come out. How many Bidens have there been? 7?
It does seem like he's a little taller lately.
Oh, I tell you, there is a story regarding that, and it has to do with CrowdStrike. I'm not sure it'll be proper content for this, Chris. Um, I'd like to just stick with the finances. And there's something going on right now that is not getting in the news. And I believe we are seeing not only the wreckage of NATO through depletion, but we're seeing the bankruptcy of the economic, what do you call it? The European Union in general, the bankruptcy of the European Union. And it's not their plan. I don't think they want to go bankrupt. But LIBOR shifting to SOFR, that's been a real challenge for the Europeans. And if the let's just say if the underground flow of money is halted from Ukraine, that's going to also do serious damage to the European economy. The banks, they rely on some of that income, the underground income, the income that doesn't get reported, the income from the double books. The Europeans need to continue the war, and they fared much better with LIBOR. But LIBOR is no more. And they got a free pass for, what was it, $2.5 trillion fraud charge about 5 years ago. They got a pass for that. Hey, $2.5 trillion is not a lot of money, so let's give them a pass. It's not a big deal, so let's give them a pass. And besides, the London bankers are good guys, so let's give them a pass. Well, now they have to deal with more reality. The other thing that Donald Trump is going to do, and it's going to affect a lot of things, he has put on record, in my first few months, I'm going to manage the U.S. government debt default. He said that. It's not like, oh gosh, he's going to defend against it. No, he's going to manage it. It's like you got a bus going downhill at 80 miles an hour, and they're going to try to manage it. They can't hit the brakes. They can't stop it. And as he tries to manage it, gold will go up. I'm not sure he's going to succeed in his objectives. But gold will go up with almost every single thing that he does. Maybe even trying to close the borders. I don't know how, but gold could go up on that too. I don't know how. Chris, this is really exciting because during all this mess, we have something happening in a very hidden manner, and that is, and that's something that Andy Schectman has brought up, and you're probably well informed about this from Andy, but the central banks are loading up on gold, and they're playing little accounting games. And to me, Andy just filled in all the background blanks for a point that I've been making, a forecast that I've been making for 2 years. The central banks are going to get into a lot of trouble. They're going to face insolvency. They're going to be looking at a lot of, what do you call it, unrealized bond losses, just like the big banks. Big banks have had 700 something billion dollars in unrealized losses. Well, so does the central bank, and so do the other central banks, the Fed and the others. And the way they get out of it is they reprice, revalue gold much higher. I've been saying it for 2 years now. It's the jelly, and I'm not pronouncing it, Jelly Zylstra. The Zylstra plan that he mentioned after his retirement, sometime around 1990. He was the Bank for International Settlement, the Basel chairman. And it was in the early 90s or mid 90s. He said, they're all going to get in trouble. The Rothschild central banks are all going to get in trouble. They'll load up on gold quietly, and they'll revalue gold to be 5,000 or 10,000. And that'll enable them to escape their insolvency. We're witnessing it now. It's not a future event. It's in progress now. Which means we could be looking at an overnight doubling of the gold price in the next several months. It could happen like in late 2025. It could happen in mid 2025. So I think Andy put it in terms of don't even think about selling your gold because this is coming. Imagine someone who sells his gold and suddenly it's worth twice as much. That's cause for getting drunk and incoherent for 2 week period. Okay, we are at the edge of something very magnificent. And I think the magnificent aspects are end of the Ukraine war, wreckage of the Geneva group of Uber lords, closing down the border, moving to a gold standard, and the United States entertaining the thought of entering Brics. I'll make a very simple statement. Countries that don't join the Brics are going to be outside looking in, and they're going to have severe economic problems outside looking in the Brics. It is going to be a global trade union, and it's going to be gold-based. A gold foundation for a global trade union, and the principal nations that are not going to be included will be the Five Eyes. England, United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. They're not going to be in it. They're going to face severe economic problems for not being in it. I don't know what you're hearing, but pardon me. We're getting a lot of hints that Texas wants to go to the wants to join the Brics. They want to make gold and silver legal tender. They want to shut down the border, and they want their own gold repository. I wish them luck on all of them. I think they will succeed in time with all those. But are you up for talking about what you heard that Texas is threatening to secede from the union? Because I put that in my newsletter 3 months ago. It's over no defense of the border, and it's over a desire to join the Brics for economic purposes, and gold and silver, as money according to the Constitution. Are you hearing that? What are you hearing about Texas and secession?
Well, I just to everyone watching at home, I mentioned to Jim that I have a friend who's a interesting government scientist, and had a conversation with him over the weekend where he made a comment to that effect, and I was a little surprised to hear that. I would not put that as ironclad. So
Okay,
say,
all right. So it's being
he does
possibly
come across some interesting information, and that's what the man said. I've not seen that reported anywhere else. So we'll
okay.
phrase it
Well,
appropriately.
the factors are lined up, though, Chris, for what I stated: protection of the border, and the federal government's part of the invasion. So they want to secede so they can protect their border. And Texas, by the way, the Lone Star State, it got that name because it was the only, what do you call it? The only entry to the Union that was actually a country before it became part of the United States Union. Arizona was a territory. Nebraska was a territory. Idaho was a territory. and they had trouble setting up marshals and having law and court systems and mining rights and things like that, property rights, farming rights, mining rights, water rights. And eventually, when they got sophisticated enough and mature, they became an entry applying to the U.S. for statehood. Texas was different. It was a country. So they want to go back to being a country. This is really quite amazing, because I believe there are at least a dozen other states that might want to join them. So I think we're going to have some very difficult decisions, Chris, on the fate and direction of the country, so that we can remain a country, remain a republic. We're not a republic now. We're a fascist state. Come on. This is really getting interesting. And oh my gosh, I wear myself out, but it's nice that one can put pen to paper, or fingers to a document, and I back up my documents very effectively. I have a habit, like noon I'll back it up, 4 o'clock I'll back it up, and at night I back it up. Chris, this is a remarkable time to be alive. And I'll say it plainly, I hope I survive.
Well, of course, we're all hoping for that. And Jim, can I throw in a question on something
Sure.
that you were mentioning there? Because this may have come out right after the last time we talked. Well, you and I have talked about it, I think, although in terms of the last time we did an interview, and that was this report about the unit, which I've heard about a couple months earlier. I brought Matt Riley on, who was the one who was quite adamant that he saw this going through. He was saying this before we had the rally in gold and silver, and Pepe Escobar has been reporting on it. And this was the arrangement that includes the 40% gold backing. And I know one of the other things they mentioned in here was that raising public awareness was one of their goals. So Jim, I'd certainly love in the context of everything you're saying there, if you could share anything you've heard or thoughts you have about the unit and what has been proposed and has been run by Putin now. So I guess the other thing that came from this article and other things that have come out in the past couple of months is that it's not just some guy suggesting it. It's not a done deal either, but now does
Oh,
appear to
I
be.
think it's pretty much a done deal. It got blessed. It got given all the holy water at the St. Petersburg, Russia, the St. Pete International Economic Forum that has now eclipsed the Davos Forum. Davos Forum is now being regarded as an elite banker barbecue with a lot of martinis and maybe activity after 10 p.m. deep underground. Okay, that's the reputation of Davos now. But St. Pete actually had $70 billion worth of deals involving 23 nations, and they actually made the St. Pete Forum a Brics conference. They melded the two, and the main agenda item, from what I gathered, and I covered this in the June report, because I think it was around a June 10th meeting at St. Pete. And St. Petersburg, for those who are challenged in the United States, it is the Atlantic coastline city of Russia. Russia is the only country that has an Atlantic coastline and a Pacific coastline. So they're a European city. And the main agenda, from what I read, was all the different things having to do with the unit. It's a pretty lame name, but it's essentially the adaptation of the Brics gold token. They wanted the gold token originally to be 100% gold, based on a gold utility coin, a crypto coin, but there was too much. let me put it this way: there was a combination of objections for too radical a move to the gold token, the Brics gold token, and they decided, well, let's do an intermediary measure. Let's have some 60% is the two different Brics nations for their own currencies, and it's whatever currency they want. And India is like this little outlier. Well, not so little. India is a very important outlier in this formula, because they're saying, well, we choose for some transactions, we choose the UAE dirham. That'll be their currency. Pardon me. So the agenda and the progress, and it was significant progress at St. Pete. And I have about 3 or 4 pages in my my June report, just last month. The agreements involved a lot of details. There was a trial, like an experimental run of Mbridge. And Mbridge, this is according to my understanding, and it may not be perfect understanding, but I do the best I can. I'm covering a lot of things. But the Mbridge is a device, a protocol. I'm sorry, not a device. It is a protocol. And it's designed to be fast, to be cheap, and to be free from interference like weaponization. All right. So it would be conducted and satisfied on the blockchain and free from interference. The United States could not say, well, we don't like you, and we're not going to let you use it. We don't like you. We're going to we're going to take our marbles and we're going to not give you any of our marbles. Okay, that's what the United States has been doing now for close to 10 years. And it has prompted the creation of the Brics Union. So Enbridge is fast, cheap, and free of interference. And that is the protocol. And what they've not told us is, well, how are they going to do the transfer of gold? How are they going to do exactly the transfer of the two currencies? And I believe we're going to see XRP. Russia has just announced that they're doing experimental usage of XRP on the blockchain. I think it's going to be much more widely used. And what I foresee is a goal where a lot of countries decide on using maybe 20% of trade payment to be done in XRP. And this is how you get to $2, $3, $4, $5, maybe $10 in the next couple of years. I'm not making this stuff up. So the St. Petersburg Forum was a Brics conference. They made a lot of progress on the unit. They decided on Enbridge. They actually made some improvements and enhancements based on their experimental experiments. And the only thing they're not talking about is, well, what will be the vehicle? Where it's like you got a highway and you got speed limits and all kinds of different rules on the sign. You're like, don't drive on the berm, don't cross the center line. I'm just giving a parallel. And they never said, well, what's the bus going to be? What's the truck going to be? I think it's going to be XRP and maybe a couple of others. We're very likely to see like a digital ruble used. We're very likely to see a digital yuan from China. And we might even see a digital rial from Iran, Persia. All right, so I hope that answers your question, Chris. I don't believe that the unit is at a low stage of development. I think it's rather far along and advanced, being used and with an alpha test.
Well, Jim, I have a few follow-up questions there because everything you said makes sense, and I've been thinking about this for a while. So let's say that the Brics successfully implement the unit as we know the basic parameters. We'll assume it stays roughly the same. If you then have what's currently over 50% of the world's oil exports, and they're using this as the settlement mechanism, payment currency, if you will. When you just think about competition of currencies, at some point, does the US get forced to match? Because if you have your oil and you can get some gold backing in your payment versus treasuries or US dollars that have the obvious flaws that, again, and certainly it's one thing for you and I to discuss it, but we've seen many of these countries adamantly say that they're seeing the problems and don't want to be eating some of the cost of that. So over a longer term, does it get to the point where if that does go out successfully, that other countries, if they want resources, are forced to match in some capacity?
I think the days of using Treasury bill for trade payment are very near an end. Very near an end. I am hearing from, you say, reliable sources that the United States is shipping out gold in order to guarantee our trade payments, in order to assure of import supply. There was something very interesting that happened. It was around the turn of the year, November, December, January. One of my colleagues, Euroraj, said, Jim, pay close attention to this because there are, at almost every U.S. port, there are large super tankers to load up on oil, and we're exporting the oil. And his theory, and he's sticking with the theory, is that the United States is earning credits for import, Chris, credits for import by exporting oil. And this is very interesting because I'm not so sure where we're going to get our domestic oil supply if we're loading up tankers. There might be a lot more production in Texas and the Gulf of Mexico than I'm aware of. There might be actually some in Alaska that I'm not aware of, but we're exporting oil to get credits for import supply because the Treasury bill is not wanted. And I heard back in December of 21, 2 months before the Ukraine war, that the war was triggered in part because of rejection of Treasury bills at Long Beach. We couldn't use Treasury bills to pay for our import supply. So suddenly there's a war, a distraction, a lot of money floating around, and the dollar is okay. It was like the dollar was given a reprieve, like a stay of execution on death row. We're in dire straits. We are going to have to adopt the Brics policy of paying with something equivalent to the unit, with the 40% gold backing, or we're not going to get supply at our ports. And just think of all the ports. We have more major ports than any country on the globe. We got Portland, Maine, Boston, New York. We got New Jersey. We got Philadelphia. We got Baltimore. We got the Chesapeake. We got Savannah. We got Miami. That's just the East Coast. We got New Orleans. We got Houston. And on the West Coast, we got San Francisco, LA, Portland, Tacoma, Seattle, Oakland. I just rattled off 15 to 20 ports. There are a lot of places where we get import supply. And I got a quick side story to tell you because I had two different consult calls with clients, and they were each affected by the Baltimore Bridge, the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And I asked one, how did your Virginia construction company adapt? He said, Jim, it was almost like a non-event. There were about 5-7 day delay. And before you know it, we got supply through Virginia, the Chesapeake ports. They just rerouted. Instead of going to Baltimore, they went to Chesapeake. The other one was from north, Boston. He said, well, we had some supply that was going to come in and then arrive by truck, but instead we got it rerouted to Philadelphia. I said, how much was your delay? And he said, oh, about 10 days. So one was 5 days, one was 10 days. That's a hiccup. This is where the sabotage of the U.S. infrastructure is going to be very difficult. We are a powerful, large country, very resourceful, with a lot of workaround potential, but we're not going to be able to work around the disdain and the rejection of the Treasury bill. Every time you see the debt going up more, and we just hit 35 trillion, by the way, and it's a trillion every 100. Okay, this is really funny, and this is embarrassingly funny. It was about 4 or 5 months ago that we learned that it was an additional $1 trillion every 100 days. Yeah, there it is, upper left, 35,006. So we're 6 billion above 35 trillion. That's just astonishing.
Jim, well, we have the chart up here. I'd feel silly if I didn't get your analysis on the dollar to silver and the dollar to gold ratios down here.
You got to help me find it.
Over on the mid right, we have the dollar to silver ratio at 408 per ounce. And to be clear, that's the year over year increase in M2 divided by the yearly production of silver in ounces. So
I'm not seeing it. The middle right, I'm not seeing it.
to the right, I'm moving the mouse around there.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, I see. All right, far right. Okay. Dollar to silver ratio.
So that's
I don't.
M2 over silver production. You see over the last.
I don't have any sharp comment. I'm sorry.
Okay, we can leave that aside.
I I will just point out that China and Russia are pursuing a silver cartel along the lines of OPEC. and they're trying to get Mexico, Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador, and who's the other one? Chile, Bolivia,
Peru.
Peru. Yeah, I always leave Peru out. Chile, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Peru. It's the Andes region. Mexico is part of the Andes. They're the northern tip. Actually, the San Andreas Fault is part of the Andes. It's the longest mountain range on the globe. Okay, back to the cartel. I know it's all very interesting, the ratios that you pointed out. I just don't have any quick comments. I haven't examined it thoroughly. It's important, but I haven't. I focus on the upper left, the 35 trillion. Okay, let me get back to the silver cartel because I had a quick story that I was telling. um, we're told we were told a few months ago that every 100 days we were accumulating another $1 trillion of debt. And I thought, wow, that's a lot faster than I thought. I was thinking it was like $2 trillion a year, which would be, what would that be? Divided by 12, about 80 billion a month. Holy mackerel. No, wait a minute. I'm sorry, 2 point something. Oh, forget about it. I'm having trouble with all the zeros. Um,
Well,
I thought
200 billion a month, you're looking at 2.4 trillion.
2.4. Yeah. Right. Okay. I thought that was about what we were doing. A little over 2 trillion, and they lie and call it 1.2, 1.4. They lie. They say, well, that's a one-off, that's a one-off, and that's a one-off, and that's a one-off, and that's a one-off. But we only have a deficit of 1.4 trillion because we ignored the other 800 billion. Well, you seem to have a steady stream of the one-offs, and Ukraine war is a one-off. Okay, here's the funny part. I heard in recent weeks that now it is more than a trillion every 100 days. And in the same paragraph, the Wall Street analyst said we're heading toward a slightly higher deficit of over 2 trillion. Now, I ask how many 100-day units? I asked to an 8th grade kid or a 7th grade kid, maybe even a 4th grade kid. How many units of 100 days are there in 1 year? I think it's 3.5, Uncle Jim. All right. 360 days divided by 100 is 3.6. This is very difficult math for Wall Street economists. So if we have 3.5 units of more than 100 billion, sorry, more, 3.5 units. There are too many zeros, Chris. If we have 3.5 units of a trillion, then how do you get 2 trillion for the deficit in the year? Okay, I'm sorry, but my napkin produces a very clear picture of closer to $3 trillion a year for the deficit. All right, that's my little story. It's funny. I kind of messed up part of it, but so be it. I tell you, I have a hard time with all the zeros. And when I get too many zeros, like I'm trying to calculate the value of a ton of gold, or how many seconds it takes
Ooh,
for light.
the ounces to tons, million ounces to tons. I'm getting
Uh,
better at that one now.
it's hard. And another one that I had trouble with was how many seconds does it take for light to get from the sun to the planet Earth? How many seconds does it take for light to get from planet Earth to the Mars? Okay. Anyway, the way I do it, the way I solve it is I bring in the 10 to the certain power, bring in the exponents, deal with the significant numbers, and then add together all the powers of 10. Anyway, Chris, this is a very major threat, a potential silver cartel. The United States in the next 2 years might find itself in trouble for expanding their solar farms if this silver cartel comes about. The way I read it was Russia and China are inviting Mexico and their southern neighbors to join the cartel because they would control at least 55% of the global silver supply. Now, do you remember? Now, you were just a little tot. How old were you in 1973?
Born in 78, Jim.
So you were You weren't alive. All right. So you were -6 years old. You were a thought by your parents for future activity. And how should I say, expansion, expansion in the family. All right.
So there is part one of the interview with Dr. Jim Willie, and oh, oh no, he's back. I thought we had wrapped up, but Jim, you're back. I hear you have a big announcement.
I do. No, you're telling me that there's an offer with Miles Franklin for some silver offerings, and it's silver coins, and I think it's a great deal. Um,
Come on,
let me
Jim.
just
Let's play the straight story. This isn't just an offering. This is the Jim Willie Constitutional Silver Special. That's different than just an offering. Only 250 over spot, buddy.
Wow, look at that. These are Franklin half dollars.
Those are the half dollars. They also have quarters available, and fortunately have a couple of these on my desk as well. And yeah, just wanted to mention, obviously, I know we have a lot of people who really appreciate hearing you every time you come on the show. Look forward to hearing you, some of whom do buy a lot of silver. And anyway, 20% of any commissions received if you call at 833-326-4653 to take advantage of the Jim Willie Junk Silver Special, will portion of that will go to support your great research, Jim. And always just appreciate you coming on here and thought that would help a little bit.
Well, that'd be fantastic. And these coins remind me of when I was a little kid and a paper boy. I was a paper boy. Seriously, I was a paper boy from age, I think, 9 to 15. And we used to collect coins because, back then they weren't dollars, they were more like cents. So we had a tremendous pile of coins every Thursday when we went collecting for, along the paper route. We had 60, 70, and another route I had 80 newspaper clients. And I had a collection of, those are Franklin half dollars, but I had the older ones, the Liberty. There's one on the left there with the eagle on the back. That's a Liberty. There are a couple there. I see the Liberty, and then
You have a
you
good
see.
junk silver collection now, Jim?
No, I don't. I just have bars that I'm trying to actually secure my ownership for. It's a difficult, long story, but I have just a funny saying with people. Gold and silver are money, and the dollar is legal tender, and it's really not money. So when we get the debt default, the bonds and the dollar are going to lose their purchasing power, and you're going to see gold and silver go up a tremendous amount relative to the dollar, which is really not money. So protect your savings, protect your life, life savings, your funds for retirement. Put it in gold, put it in silver. I prefer silver. I think silver is going to go up 3 times as much as gold. Another way of saying that is that when everything goes up, the gold silver ratio is going to drop from 80 down to about 30 or maybe 25. That means the bigger gains are coming with silver. Michael Oliver believes we're going to see $50 price of silver before November. I think that's very likely. Andy Sheckman has been touting silver and expecting a very big price move. We got a really big crisis coming, Chris, for silver. You mentioned that silver dealers were taking sold silver coins and having them melt down for industrial purposes. We got a tremendous demand for solar panels, electronics, and all kinds of different things. We've got an annual silver default. Okay, they're keeping it down in price with naked shorting, and it's really not going to last long. Take advantage of this rather than complaining. This is a discount. They're going to lose in their naked shorting criminal fraudulent games. They're going to lose in a big way. Okay, never forget, we got 1 billion ounces short from Bank of America. I really wonder what their anchor price is. Could it be maybe around 20 or 22? Are they facing $6, $8 loss on their 1 billion ounces of silver? Okay, that could be enough to kill Bank of America, and that's my favorite Wall Street bank to collapse. So I love the coins. I've actually got a quarter here in the window that reminds me of home. I found it on the street. Um, we've got some of the nicest coins in the world. I'm serious. The Gold Eagle and Silver Eagle and the Morgan.
Although,
Um,
Jim, do you have your own product yet? Is there a Jim Willie ounce? Is this
no,
something we need to get to
I,
market ASAP? I mean,
I don't,
I
I
think the
don't.
demand would be strong to very strong.
It's funny as this sounds. I don't really like the silver rounds with unique faces on them. I like the standard bullion coin. Okay, just imagine this. Someone buys a Jim Willie silver ounce round, and I'm gone. And 8 years later, someone wants to sell it, and people say, "What the hell is that?"
We could just go straight to statue form for you. I mean, that might be the limited edition. I think
I
we could get a bobblehead feature, Jim Willie in
A
silver.
bobblehead silver Jim Willie. I don't know.
Yes, yes, that's it.
Well, I didn't know what you were going to do with that pose. It looks like I'm surrendering to somebody, but let me just surrender to the gold and silver rally that is coming in a big way. Get out of the way. Anyone who tries to short this or anyone tries to sell into it, you're going to get run over.
Yeah, well, there you go. And
There you go. Hey,
again,
remember, Chris, wherever you go, there you are.
this is very true, and kind of analysis that you only get from the great Dr. Jim Willie of the Golden Hyphen Jackass, where he publishes the hat trick letter. And again, if anyone would like to take advantage of the Jim Willie Constitutional Silver Special, give us a call at 833-326-4653. And some of that proceeds of that will go to support Jim and his great research. And you take good care of yourself. And thanks.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks to everyone at home watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you again soon.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Bye now.